There's a never-ending arms race in the watch industry, as watchmakers continually try to outdo each other in terms of interesting and innovative materials. These include materials like carbon fiber and ceramic and myriad other permutations thereof. Audemars Piguet was one of the first to introduce these materials, bringing carbon fiber into one of their watches. But other watchmakers have also followed suit, including companies such as Panerai, for example. Now, of course, Breitling is no different, and they've developed their own Breitlight material, which has made its way into several of its watches. Case in point is the Breitling Colt Skyracer, which is the second watch to use this material. Now, the Breitlight material is a polymer that seems to use short carbon fibers, hence why we've got this marbled, forged carbon fiber look evident throughout the watch case. So let's look at this watch in a little bit more detail. And the one I've got here is currently live available for auction. You can check that out using the link in the description below and in the pinned comment. But when it sells, I'll include links to other models you might be interested in. So what do you get in the box? Well, the watch I've got here has the box and all of the interior paperwork. It's much like many boxes, of course. The outer box is a green cardboard box. It looks like most of the Breitling boxes. There's nothing particularly unusual to report about it. It is rather solid, it feels kind of sturdy in the hand, but it is, after all, a box. Now inside this box, well, we've got several things inside it. We have, for example, the travel case, which is in a fabric material, and I'll come back to that. We've also got a pouch with all of the paperwork in it. So we've got a warranty card, which is rather hefty, and we've also got the instruction manual and the authenticity certificate. Now the inner box itself has this textured fabric look. It is kind of reminiscent of some of the laptop bags to some extent. It's a lightweight material, but it certainly is not leather. It feels sturdy, it feels as if you could travel with that watch case, and the watch itself would remain perfectly intact. However, like I've said, it isn't a premium material like leather. Now if we compare that inner box to another leather Breitling box I have from a different watch, we can see in fact that it compares favorably. The leather watch box is actually seeming to my mind a little bit flimsier than this textured material watch box. So therefore, I'm not actually that disappointed about how the inner box is. However, again, it really depends on what you want. Now, if we look at the pouch here, we've got the warranty card, and the warranty card is really rather hefty. It's one of those electronic type warranty cards. It's kind of a big chunk of plastic. That contrasts with some of the other style of warranty cards, which are more like a very flimsy plastic credit card type look. This one is much more solid, and I much prefer it. We've also got the instruction manual, which probably no one will ever read. And we've got the supposed authenticity certificate, although in reality, you'd probably want to have the watch authenticated rather than just rely on those certificates. And one of the neat features of Grailsy where I'm auctioning this watch is it would be authenticated when it goes through to the ultimate buyer. But overall, when we look at all of what's in this box, well, it presents quite nicely. Not necessarily ultra premium like Audemars Piguet or something, but it's a nice presentation. Now, like I've said, this watch has all of the stuff with it, and if you were to go and buy one of these watches, you would obviously want to look out for the box and the papers and all of those types of things. This then leads me onto the watch itself, and in particular, the watch case is probably one of the focal points here. Now, the watch case is probably the main standout. Like I've said, it's made out of Breitling's Breitlight material. The Breitlight material is a proprietary material that only Breitling uses. Now, we don't know the exact process they use, but it appears to be a polymer that has short carbon fibers in it. This is why we have a rather strong watch, a rather sturdy watch, that is also rather lightweight. It's also why we've got this marbled, forged carbon type look throughout the watch. Now this patterning is evident throughout the whole of the watch, but it's probably most evident on the back of the watch, or on the rear case, because this has more of a flat surface, so you can actually see the marbled look on the reverse. However, like I've said, it is evident throughout all of the case. This is a rather neat aesthetic, and it is rather different from standard watches. It gives a bit of a point of difference that I kind of like. Now, in addition to the aesthetics, the main selling point is the lightweight material. Now, the watch itself is 45mm wide and is 13mm thick, but the case only weighs 34 grams. This is an astoundingly light watch, and this is because the Breitlight material is reportedly 3 times lighter than titanium and 8 times lighter than steel, while also being reportedly thermally stable and hypoallergenic. This overall makes the watch very, very light, and it feels light when it is on your wrist. It feels significantly lighter than, for example, a steel Tag Heuer Aquaracer that I have that is of a similar size. It feels like it is very, very usable. It feels like you could use it for things such as sport and not notice that it is on your wrist, which to my mind is one of the main selling points here. You've got an interesting aesthetic, and it is actually quite lightweight, so you kind of forget that it's just sitting there. which is probably good if you're actually using it while doing activities. Now the dial itself is rather pleasing. It's this black, white and red colorway. The large numerals make it very easy to read. And the red highlights also help to stand out the things that you might also want to be looking at in a hurry. Now it has a rather Breitling style and appearance. The numerals are reminiscent of the types of numerals that Breitling is often using in its watches. Another interesting point here is the lume. That really stands out and it makes the watch very easy to read in dark situations. The crown is signed, although it is rather difficult to see unless you've got light really shining on it. It's from this non-stick material, so a different material from the rest of the watch case. It's relatively easy to use and operates like you would expect. You would unscrew it and then you pull it out to be able to set the time or the date. Like I've said, it's a non-slip material which makes it relatively easy to use if you're doing it while doing activities. The bezel also moves with a rather satisfying manner, although the bezel is a little bit tighter than some other bezels that I've used. Now despite this firmness, you've got raised markers at the 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock areas, which gives you some purchase to move the bezel around, making it a little bit less tight than it might otherwise appear. Now the caseback, as I've indicated, is flat, but it has Breitling on it, it has some text on it, although there's nothing massive to report there. The main thing that really stands out about the caseback is the material that it's made of, because here you can really see the texturing. It really comes out on this flat surface, and it's really quite pleasant to look at. The strap is a rubber strap, which is probably not terribly surprising given the nature of the watch, and given that it seems to be more designed for active use. The rubber strap is relatively standard in nature, but it has some measurement conversions on it. I suspect that no one will ever use these, but it kind of ties into the sporty, outdoorsy nature of the watch. Now the buckle is also pleasant enough, if slightly unremarkable. However, it does feature the Breitling logo on it, which I guess makes it a little bit less generic than it might otherwise be. But overall, the aesthetics in the case are actually quite nice. It's light, it looks interesting, it's a bit different from the other sporty watches, and it's very usable. This leads me on to the movement. Now the watch uses Breitling's thermocompensated Super Quartz Caliber 74. Now that's a lot of words for basically saying it's a quartz movement, although this quartz movement does purport to be 10 times more accurate than a standard quartz movement, which I guess might be important to some people, although I'm not totally sure how many people are going to care about that 10 times greater accuracy. In any case, that's what the movement is. Now quartz watches aren't necessarily to everyone's taste. However, for a sports watch where you're using it actively outdoors, it probably makes some sense. You're not necessarily going to use your mechanical Rolex while doing sport, but you might be more inclined to use a quartz watch that is very lightweight. Adjusting the time and the date is also very straightforward. Like I've indicated, you unscrew the crown, then you pull it out, and you can adjust the time or the date much like you ordinarily would. Now, like I've said, I imagine most people buying this watch are probably interested in it for the lightweight, interesting material, the robust case, the robust use case for the watch, and its utility as an active watch that people might use. It also has a point of difference from other competitors like the Tag Heuer Formula 1, and I find the Breitling Colt Skyracer a little bit more interesting, if only because it's a little bit less common and is made out of a much more interesting material than the Formula 1 is, for example. Now of course there are alternatives to the Breitling Colt Skyracer. These could include the Tag Heuer Formula 1, although I would probably take the Breitling over the Formula 1 if I were given the choice. Now like I've indicated, I'm auctioning this watch at the moment on Grailsea. Now Grailsea is a brilliant platform for both buyers and sellers. All watches go to an authentication process with Grailsea regardless of the brand or the price point or the originating location. Now I've personally found Grailsea to be super easy to use and very intuitive, hence why I'm auctioning this watch on their platform. You can check it out using the link in the description below or in the pinned comment. But when the watch sells, I'll also include links to other watches that you might find interesting. But in any case, thanks a lot for tuning in. If you've got any thoughts about the watch, well do let me know that in the comments below. And otherwise, hopefully I see you next time as well.